Imagine this. It's May 1940. The swastika, a chilling symbol of tyranny, flies from Norway's northern tip all the way to the Maginot Line in France. The British Army, they're not advancing. They're desperately retreating toward a little port called Dunkirk. And the French government, seeing the writing on the wall, is already burning its archives, trying to erase history before it's rewritten by force. Neville Chamberlain, the man who promised peace in our time, had resigned just that afternoon. Parliament was in a full-blown revolt, and the War Office, in hushed private tones, warned that a full-scale invasion of Britain could be just 2 weeks away. It's 7 p.m. on May 13th. A 65-year-old man who'd been relegated to the political wilderness, banished to the backbenches for a decade, stands up in the House of Commons. He looks out at a nation teetering on the brink, and he says, "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." Those 7 words didn't just describe the crisis, they defined the reply. This is the story of how a single speech, delivered at the darkest hour, turned raw panic into resolute purpose and transformed a skittish, vulnerable island into a nation that would fight on the beaches, in the fields, and in the streets until victory was won. Now, let's be clear. I'm not here to give you another hagiography, another saintly portrait of Winston Churchill. He was, by all accounts, a deeply flawed man. He was famously wrong about India, spectacularly wrong about Gallipoli, and could be unbelievably wrong about people. But on that pivotal day, May 13th, 1940, he got something profoundly, unequivocally right. It was a moment historians still quote, filmmakers still borrow, and politicians, even today, still try to imitate. Today, we're going to tear that speech apart, much like a mechanic pulls an engine, piece by piece. I'll explore what those words truly meant, why they worked with such electrifying power, and how a country that genuinely expected to lose the war somehow found the collective will to keep throwing Spitfires into the sky until the sky itself seemed to bear the defiant colors of Britain. Let's really look at the calendar. It's May 10th, 1940. The news is apocalyptic. Rotterdam is burning, reduced to rubble. Luxembourg is gone, swallowed whole by the German war machine. The Wehrmacht's armored spearheads, moving with terrifying speed, are already past Sedan, pushing deep into France. The British Expeditionary Force isn't just retreating. They're scampering backwards so fast their lorries are running out of petrol. London itself feels like a city holding its breath. The cabinet, unable to fit into the already overcrowded underground map room, meets in the Downing Street garden, a surreal image of genteel desperation. Inside, Chamberlain's parliamentary majority has melted away like snow in the spring sun. 2 of his closest allies, men who'd stood by him through thick and thin, tell him, plainly, he must go. The political landscape is fractured, dangerous. The only candidate the Conservatives will accept, and crucially, the only man Labour will agree to serve under, is the very person most Tories deeply distrusted, Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill. At 6 p.m. on the 10th, he kisses hands with King George VI, officially becoming Prime Minister. He walks into number 10 Downing Street, and later He writes in his diary, with a sense of almost poetic grandeur, "I felt as if I were walking with destiny." Destiny, however, looked less like a glorious path and more like a stack of urgent telegrams piled high on his desk, each one screaming withdraw, retreat, and critical. The weight of the world, quite literally, had just landed on his shoulders. Churchill had just 48 hours to perform a miracle, not only to form a new, unified government, but even more importantly, to decide what story Britain would tell itself in the face of utter catastrophe. The whispers were everywhere. Lord Halifax, a prominent figure, subtly suggested that Mussolini might be persuaded to broker a peace deal, a capitulation in all but name. The newspapers, anticipating the worst, were printing evacuation leaflets, preparing the public for the unthinkable, and the Treasury, in a stark admission of fear, was secretly shipping Britain's gold reserves across the Atlantic to Canada, just in case. Inside Number 10, the new Prime Minister, a man now bearing the full burden of a nation, dictated to his secretary. The windows were taped against blast, a constant reminder of the war that raged outside. He crossed out phrases, circled others, honing his message. And then he revived a line, a powerful, stark declaration he'd first used way back in 1903 in Manchester: blood, toil, tears, and sweat. The order of those words isn't accidental, it matters deeply. Blood is what you give first, the ultimate sacrifice. Toil is what you do every single day, the grinding effort. Tears are what you shed in private, the quiet sorrow. And sweat. Sweat is what the public sees, the visible sign of relentless hard work. 4 powerful nouns, no verbs, no empty promises, no sugarcoating, just the brutal, honest expectation of pain and immense effort. It was, arguably, the least seductive bargain ever offered to a frightened democracy. Yet, it was precisely the bargain Britain needed. At precisely 7:03 p.m. on May 13th, the Speaker's gavel cracked and the call of order echoed through the chamber. The House of Commons was packed, every seat taken, every corridor crammed. You could almost smell the damp wool of their suits mixed with the palpable scent of fear and pee, and anticipation hanging heavy in the air. Churchill began quietly, almost conversationally, a stark contrast to the thunderous rhetoric many expected. "I beg to move," he started, his voice steady, "that this House welcomes the formation of a government representing the united and inflexible resolve of the nation to prosecute the war with Germany to a victorious conclusion." He built the tension, setting the stage. And then he dropped the famous sentence, not as a dramatic crescendo, not with a flourish or a fist banging on the dispatch box, but as a blunt, undeniable fact, delivered with a quiet, steely resolve. "I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat." The chamber fell utterly silent. For the first time in weeks, perhaps months, a minister was telling them the unvarnished truth. He repeated the word victory 6 times in 45 seconds, hammering it home like a relentless drumbeat, embedding it deep into the collective consciousness. So, How did those 7 words, delivered with such understated power, travel faster than tanks across the continent? Why did they resonate so profoundly? Well, it wasn't magic. It was masterful communication, a brilliant understanding of the human spirit in crisis. First, and perhaps most crucially, was honesty. For 8 long months, Britons had been fed a diet of polite fictions. Hearing that the front was stabilizing even as maps clearly showed it moving relentlessly towards Calais. Churchill's brutal candor, his willingness to speak hard truths, was a profound relief. People were tired of being patronized. They yearned for someone to acknowledge the terrifying reality. Second, there was asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Notice the pronouns he used. Our policy, our aim, our resolve, we shall fight. There was no us and them. No sense of the government fighting asterisk for asterisk the people, while the people remained mere spectators. He made everyone a participant, a shareholder in the coming struggle. Third, the sheer asterisk asterisk rhythm asterisk asterisk of the speech was hypnotic. Linguists call it anaphora, the repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses. Listeners, however, simply called it a drumbeat. The brain, fascinatingly, remembers rhythm and repetition before it fully processes content. Victory at all costs, victory in spite of all terror, victory however long and hard the road may be. It's a cadence that lodges itself in your mind. Fourth, and perhaps most psychologically brilliant, was the framing of asterisk asterisk sacrifice as agency asterisk asterisk. You weren't a passive victim of the blitzkrieg, merely waiting for the inevitable. No, you were an active shareholder in victory, and your subscription, your investment, was paid in blood, toil, tears, and sweat. That semantic trick, that subtle shift in perspective, transformed despair into a powerful sense of duty and purpose. It gave ordinary people a role, a reason to endure, to fight. The impact was almost immediate, spreading like wildfire. Within an hour of Churchill's delivery, the BBC aired the speech, ensuring his words reached every corner of the nation. Within a day, newspapers, despite wartime paper rationing, printed the full text on their front pages, giving it permanence and accessibility. A London bus conductor, perfectly encapsulating the national mood, told Mass Observation, a social research organization, "I didn't know what we were fighting for till I heard that." Think about that. A single speech provided clarity and purpose where only confusion and fear had reigned. Recruiting stations, suddenly overwhelmed, stayed open past midnight. The Territorial Army, Britain's volunteer reserve force, doubled its intake in just a week. The speech didn't magically win the war, of course. But what it did do was buy Britain the most precious commodity it lacked, time. Every convoy that later steamed from Halifax, bringing vital supplies across the U-boat-infested Atlantic. Every brave pilot who later lifted off from Biggin Hill to defend the skies carried with him the permission to endure, the resolve to fight that was printed not just in the Commons order paper of May 13th, but etched into the very spirit of the nation. That iconic phrase, blood, toil, tears, and sweat, didn't just fade away after the war's immediate crisis. Oh no, it became ingrained in the national consciousness. You'd see it scrawled as graffiti on factory walls, a defiant message of grit. It inspired comic strips in the Daily Mirror, turning a grim reality into accessible, morale-boosting art. It even appeared as a morale patch sewn onto the flight jackets of RAF pilots, a constant, tangible reminder of their purpose. By 1943, the Ministry of Information conducted a survey of public opinion and found something truly astonishing. 88% of respondents could recite at least part of the line. That's a higher recall rate than almost any line from Shakespeare. After the war, its power continued to resonate. Eisenhower borrowed it for the D-Day Memorial, invoking its spirit of sacrifice and collective effort. John F. Kennedy, in his inaugural address, echoed its call to national service. Even today, you'll hear a Silicon Valley CEO, perhaps launching a new product, adapt its cadence. The sentence endures because it's brilliantly modular. Swap out victory for innovation, freedom, or even market share, and the underlying cadence, the powerful rhythm, still works. That's precisely why historians, with a wry nod, often call it the most plagiarized paragraph of the 20th century. It's a testament to its timeless, adaptable power. If you're curious to hear how Churchill pulled off the same rhetorical trick with even fewer asterisk words just the next month, drop finest hour in the comments below, and I'll break that speech down for you next week. And while you're typing, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because history is just too interesting to leave confined to a dusty textbook. It's worth remembering that Churchill wasn't some natural, charismatic populist who effortlessly swayed crowds. Far from it. He spoke with a noticeable lisp, a speech impediment he fought against his entire life. He often rehearsed his speeches in front of mirrors, meticulously perfecting his delivery. He even paid a secretary to sit in the gallery and clap at specific points, signaling to the backbenchers when they should join in, orchestrating the applause. What he understood, deeply and intuitively, was that courage isn't contagious in a vacuum. It's only contagious when it's reported, when it's communicated, when it's seen and heard. So, he meticulously scripted the applause lines, crafted every pause, every word. Then, the public performance over, he'd walk back into his private office, pour himself a whiskey, a well-deserved one, I'd wager, and immediately dictate another memo, perhaps about tank production or the logistics of troop movements. The same man who thundered victory at all costs in public, inspiring a nation with his rhetoric, spent that very same night calculating precisely what those costs were, meticulously scribbling figures on a sheet of yellow legal paper. That tension, that brilliant, believable interplay between soaring rhetoric and brutal, practical arithmetic is what made the speech so credible. He wasn't asking you to do anything he wasn't willing to sign off on, to calculate, to live with himself. His words carried the weight of his own profound understanding of the monumental struggle ahead. Let's indulge in a chilling thought experiment, a counterfactual history. Imagine for a moment that Lord Halifax, rather than Churchill, had become Prime Minister in May 1940. That same evening, he likely would have spoken of negotiated guarantees of temporary adjustments to the geopolitical reality. The British fleet, instead of being committed to a global struggle, might have spent the war guarding the empire's distant outposts while Hitler turned his full, unhindered might eastwards. Stalin, without a Western front to divide German forces, would have faced the full, terrifying brunt of the Wehrmacht alone, almost certainly leading to a swifter, more brutal defeat. D-Day, as we know it, would have been utterly impossible without a secure, resolute Western launchpad. In that asterisk grim timeline, the Holocaust would have unfolded on an even more horrific, continental scale, reaching further and deeper, and the first atomic bomb, it might not have been American, but German, dropped on Moscow in 1946, decisively ending a war that Britain, in this alternative reality, largely sat out. One speech, of course, didn't prevent all that single-handedly, but it absolutely closed the door through which such terrifying futures could have entered. It slammed it shut with a resounding thud. The moral here is profound. Words aren't just words. They are, in a very real sense, the software on which states run, the code that defines their actions and their very survival. The next time you hear a politician, any politician, promise blood, sweat, and tears, listen closely. You'll notice they almost always drop toil. Why? Because toil is too honest. It implies the daily grind, the monotonous, exhausting effort, not the heroic, glamorous sprint. Churchill's original phrase survives, resonant and powerful, precisely because it refuses that easy shortcut. It tells every citizen, plainly and without embellishment, you will wake up tired. You will go to bed worried, and still, you will get up tomorrow and do it all again. That's not just wartime propaganda. It's a profound truth about adult life, about enduring hardship. Which is why, whenever democracies around the world face a true crisis, whether it's a financial crash, a global pandemic, or the existential threat of climate change, that quotation resurfaces. It becomes the Western world's alarm tone, a blunt, urgent reminder that survival isn't some inherent entitlement. It's a hard-won daily subscription, paid for with effort and sacrifice. Go ahead, hit that share button and send this to the person who keeps saying, with a sigh, we've never been through anything like this before. Actually, we have just not with Instagram to document every terrifying moment. So, the next time you see that iconic sentence on a poster, strip away the sepia tone of history. Hear it as it truly sounded on that fraught evening of May 13th, 1940, a defiant dare thrown directly at despair, a solemn contract forged between a stammering yet utterly resolute prime minister and a frightened, uncertain public. Britain didn't win the war that night, not by a long shot, but it made an irrevocable decision. The war would absolutely not be lost in a committee room. Not through negotiation, not through surrender. Churchill's genius lay in his ability to make the crushing price of resistance sound not like a burden, but like a profound privilege, a necessary and noble path. Blood, toil, tears, and sweat for powerful syllables, each payable daily, compounding, day after day, into eventual victory. The bill for that commitment came due for 6 long, agonizing years. But when the meticulous accountants of history finally closed the ledger, the balance read clear: interest earned, freedom preserved.